Welcome everyone to the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. This is the Intermacs Quarterly Reports webinar. It's Thursday, October 20th. We have the Intermacs reporting team that's going to be with us today and answer questions and show a presentation regarding the Intermacs reports. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I just want to thank the Intermacs team. We have Dr. Ron Cantor. Dr. Rama's not going to join us today. We have Dr. Brandon Singletary. We have Maceo Cleget. I don't think Chase Linderman's on yet. And we have John Pennington and Patricia Potter, who's joining us today from Intermacs Data Warehouse Center. We also have from STS, we have Carol Crone and myself. And Carol is the STS Director of the National Databases. So thanks everyone for your support today. Just want to welcome everyone. And again, I'd mentioned earlier, look forward to seeing those who can attend AQO next week. And I look forward to meeting everyone and talking with everyone. So as far as the STS updates, just want to let everyone know that you can still register for AQO, the conference next week, in the data managers meeting in Providence, Rhode Island, and you can register up until the day of the meeting. And the Intermacs and PDMacs day is Wednesday, October 26th. And if you need additional information on that, if you can email myself or Patricia Potter, and we'll be more than happy to send you the information. But today we're going to go ahead and get started. Maceo Cleget will begin our presentation, and then Dr. Ron Cantor. So definitely just want to remind everyone to use the Q&A function for your questions. And Maceo Cleget will do a presentation, and then Dr. Ron Cantor. And then after that, we will take questions and answer them as we are able. So Maceo, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and I'll let you go ahead and get started.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go over some brief information about the reports. The outline, what me and Ryan Cantor are going to go over today, is where to download your quarterly report, what's in your quarterly report packet, and I have top 3 basic questions I get every quarter, and Ryan Cantor will go over the top 3 statistics questions he gets each quarter. As again, my name is Maceo Cleget. I'm the report analyst for STS, Intermacs, and PDMacs, and I work along the side with Ryan Cantor, our lead statistician at STS, Intermacs, and PDMacs. Who has access to the quarterly site reports? Site admins and backup site admins can download the zip report, the zip packet from the web-based data entry system. Reports are available for 90 days. We're working on to increase the number of days that it is available on the web-based data entry system. I have a Word document on how to download your site report if you would like, and you can email me at the intermacs-report@uabmc.edu if you would like a copy. Inside your report packet, you should have 9 files, 2 Word doc files. 1 Word doc is a letter to the site administrator that basically goes on what's included in the reports, a README doc of all the files that are in the packet itself, your data quality report. We have 3 cumulative reports, your all patient reports, primary VAD patients, and your prior VAD patients. Also, we have the recent all patients, recent primary VAD patients, and recent prior VAD patients in your packet. Once you open your zip packet, it should look exactly like this. All reports are password protected. So if you don't have your password, please reach out to me and I will get that to you quickly as possible. So as far as my 3 basic questions I get pretty much every quarter, need the password for your site reports, again, just email me at Intermacs Reports, and I will surely get that back to you as soon as possible. Requests for new exhibits in the report, please reach out to Catherine Holyfield at STS, at kholyfield@sts.org. Feel free to provide any feedback that you would like, or any exhibits that you would like change, or new exhibits inside the QA report. And how can you get access to your old site reports? Email me at intermaxreports@uabmc.edu, and I will I respond quick as possible, but give a day or two so I can get everything back off the archive drive and upload them for you. Outside of that, I believe that's it. And I want to pass it off to Ryan Cantor, as he will provide more information in the QA reports.
Great, thanks Maceo. And Maceo is definitely the point person for all things reporting Intermacs. He knows how to find the answers and or contact anybody else on our team. So thanks for all that information on how to access the reports. Let me share my screen now. Can you see that, Catherine? Top 3 report statistic questions?
Yes, I can see it.
Cool, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to talk through just some of the, maybe not top, but I'll say more recent questions that I've gotten kind of the statistical nature on the reporting. And pretty much any statistical questions in reporting will wind up on my desk. So feel free to reach out to Maceo and myself with these. So one kind of common question a site administrator will ask me is, one of the doctors has a specific question about a specific exhibit, either what's the definition of the exhibit, or what does it mean, or who are the patients in this exhibit. And so sometimes site administrators will want a lot more information about one specific exhibit. It might just be a table or a Kaplan-Meier curve or one of our kind of time series plots. But the first spot to find out more information is just to go to the Intermacs Reports webpage. So within the kind of Intermacs informational page hosted at UAB, we have a whole page dedicated to all of our kind of analytic features. So I'm going to click over there real quick and you can see it. So a lot of this is things about our quarterly site reports. If you have questions about the site data sets, they're there, or the Intermacs reporting FAQ there. So that's usually pretty helpful to folks. It talks through some of the things Maceo already talked about, who can get the report, how to get older ones, what's the distribution schedule, and some of our more common calculation and definition type questions. So that's all here. There's something that's not there, reach out to us. We'll answer your question and probably upload the answer. Probably other folks have the same question. But the Intermacs reporting page, just has a lot of resources. It has example reports, has the distribution schedule. Buried in here are some other demos and FAQs. So that's probably the best bet when you're first researching questions, followed by just email us. And we're happy to respond by email. We respond pretty quickly. Sometimes it's easier just to jump on the phone for 15 minutes and talk through an exhibit. And so we're happy to meet with you and any of your bad teams. We really want to make sure that folks are able to utilize the information. We appreciate all the effort it is to get the information in. And so anything that helps you use your information, reach out to us. So this was a recent question that I thought was kind of interesting. A site wanted to know what's the difference between a rate and a patient percent, and which one should I use for benchmarking at my site? So here's the disclaimer part. I can't really tell you what's the best thing to use for benchmarking at your site. It really depends on what question you're trying to answer. And so what I can do is give a little bit of a better definition and tell you the pros and cons, because both can definitely be used for benchmarking, and you just have to decide kind of what your use case is. So a rate is a little bit more complicated, and for a rate, it's calculated by taking the number of events divided by the amount of patient time at risk. So the features of a rate are it can include multiple events per patient are counted, and so for some events like infection, where a event can resolve and then happen again, and it can happen multiple times in a patient, a rate might be really useful if you want to count things more than once. The unit is per patient time, and that scale can be really anything, and we elect to have per 100 patient months. That just gives us whole numbers for analysis, but like I said, the denominator is per unit time. The pro of a rate is that all patient time is followed, and all patient follow-up time is considered. So if a patient is followed for a short amount of time in the registry, only a month, and they get a transplant or censored because you only implanted them a month ago, they're given credit for that month of follow-up. Any events that happen in that month of follow-up are counted, but it's not giving them extra credit for being followed, say 2 years, but it's not giving someone that was followed for 2 years, it's giving them a full 2-year follow-up credit, So the cons of a rate are they're a little bit harder to interpret. It's a little bit less intuitive, and you need about 10 events to have a stable rate. If you really only have 1 or 2 events, a rate is not going to be, it can be all over the place. And so when you're comparing to aggregates, if you only have like 1 event at your site, a rate is not going to be a meaningful comparison. Okay, now for patient percent. This one's a little bit easier. It's the number of patients that experience at least 1 event divided by the total number of patients at risk. So patients are only counted once, and all patients have the same impact on the calculation. The unit is percent. Pro of a rate of a patient percent is that it's really easy to interpret. The con is that a patient with very little follow-up, that patient with only 1 month follow-up, counts just as much as a patient with 2 years of follow-up. And if you have a patient that you're following for 2 years, they're really experiencing a lot more opportunity to have, adverse events. And so if they stay adverse event free that whole time, great. You really want that to count, that longer length of time compared to keeping a patient, alive on a device adverse free for a month. Those two are considered the same, so I would say patient percent is better suited when you have a lot of follow-up for all your patients and when the number of events are relatively small. In general, I recommend from a statistical standpoint that the rates are more statistically appropriate for the number of patients that don't have equal follow-up. But both are accurate numbers in the reports. Both of them trend really close together. And so I think you can feel confident comparing yourself to the aggregate on either of these measures. I'm happy to answer more questions if people have them in the comments for those. Okay, moving on to my last question is what happened to the zone variables in the exhibits? I get this a couple times a year or a quarter. Hypertension, hemolysis, and right heart failure. With the adverse event changes that happened at the end of last year, I think, or we might be going on a full year now. Time flies, but the zone variables that were originally event-driven, they got changed to zones. It made sense to move them back to event-driven data collection again. And so event-driven data collection suits itself to being reported in rates. So the zone percentages exhibits were removed, and all of those exhibits, the data was mapped back to the adverse events, and all of those conditions are now events, and the exhibits come out in the main rate table of the events. So now you'll see back in the main rate table, hypertension, hemolysis, and right heart failure. And we've done a ton of data cleanup and a lot of review with our data team, as our programming team and with our kind of top clinical leadership to make sure that this mapping was really the best we could do. It's always hard when the database changes, and we've accommodated this to the best of our ability in these, new events in those rate tables. And especially if you use the most recent year report, these definition changes will have less of an impact, the further we move away from that change. All right, well, Macy, you want to have the Hospital X version of the reports if anybody has any questions and wants us to pull up any specific exhibit. But at this point, we're happy to turn it over to the question and answer period. And maybe while people write in their questions, I can take the one question that we had written in beforehand. Does that sound okay, Catherine?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, so this was a question about what to do if their site does not collect the 6-minute walk. It says measuring progress via 6-minute walk test. If it's not done, can we measure heart failure improvement using the physician documented heart failure class? So I talked with Catherine about this. If your site just doesn't do 6-minute walk, there is another exhibit, the NYHA class over time, that would be appropriate if that's how your site monitors heart failure over time. But just to show you what this looks like in the reports, there's this exhibit 31 that, and Hospital X is a made-up hospital, so I'm not showing any specific hospital details here. But exhibit 31 is NYHA class over time. And here it is in a graphical form. Hospital X, again, a made-up hospital. It shows, pre-implant to the 3-month, up to 1 year, what's the reported average NYHA class. So if you don't use 6-minute walk, that is an alternate exhibit you might want to use. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. So it looks like we do have one question. And it looks like it is, or we have a couple. One of them is from Dave, said he joined late, and if we could show the report packet zip slides. And Dave, these the slides from this presentation will be posted on the STS website by the end of the week, so you'll be able to see that. But if we have time at the end, maybe Maceo, he already pulled it up, so there you go. Thanks,
I will
Maceo.
say if you have, if some of these scenarios don't apply to your hospital, you might not have all of these reports. For instance, if your hospital, in the more recent years doesn't have any patients with a prior history, that you might have less than the number of PDFs there, but everybody should have the 2 documents and the data quality report and at least 1 patient in the main research build. So, and then like shareable versions of all these reports for Hospital X are on the website that I showed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. And the next question, why does the format of the downloaded data change every quarter? Some columns are added and some dropped.
Would that be based on the forum download or based in
yeah, it must be it says the format of the downloaded data. So I'm assuming that he's talking about, Dave, if you can just confirm if you're talking about the live data downloads, that'd be great.
If John's on the call, he might be best suited to answer that question.
Really, whether the answer is the live data download or the quarterly data sets that we upload alongside Ron's reports, that reflects a few things. It could be the mapping Ron discussed earlier. If there was a variable data that was collected previously at follow-up in his own, for instance, if we move that into an adverse event form and we map that data is going to change. It's going to be available then in the adverse event, either SAS data set or the appropriate adverse event form download.
We do our best to keep those variable names the same when they move, or I do, just for continuity, but there may be a different variable name there. But we do that so that you don't get the same data duplicated. We don't want you to have the data on the follow-up form if it's no longer collected on the follow-up form if it's been mapped over. So yeah, so an example is like right heart failure that moved from the zones to the AEs again with version 6.1 this time last year. So any of those right heart failure variables you would have been looking for previously in a follow-up, the whichever site you're at there, it's like PT underscore follow-up probably, or follow-up is the SAS data set name. You would find that now in the events follow-up name. That's just a part of us working in living registries because we changed data collection, we changed the form layouts, the data reflects those changes.
Thanks,
I would
John.
say though that you know, a good 95+% of the content should be very, very similar quarter to quarter. So if you have any questions about like those changes or how to use it, or you're missing something, you know, reach out to us because we'll help you work through it. But yeah, I'm glad you said that phrase, living registry, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and Ron took the next words out of my mouth. Dave, anybody but Dave specifically, since it sounds like you're working with our data. If you ever see anything like that, reach out to me. I mean, I'm the one that puts this stuff together. So I'm happy. Shoot me an email and I'll answer your questions.
Thanks, John. Our next question is from Tiandra. Can you clarify AEs for patients that receive primary implant at our site but transferred out? The FAQ is slightly confusing. Are the AE rates excluded once a patient transfers out? Or are they attributed to the primary implanting facility?
I might have hit the wrong thing there. So sorry if that FAQ is confusing. I'll go back and read it. For the purpose of the QA reporting, you know, and our analytic reporting builds, all events and outcomes are attributed back to the implanting site. So that's how it's currently reported, and that's consistent through pretty much all of our systems. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. And the next question is from Rachel regarding the recent all patients report. Is it only patients implanted over the last 6 quarters, not all patients?
Right. So yeah, the timing recent, you know, it's either recent or cumulative, and so if you say recent, we're just talking about the last 6 quarters. And so it's only patients who received their first Intermacs implant in the last 6 quarters. That's what that covers. So it's all patients receiving implants, their first implant within the time frame. The time frame for that report is recent last 6 quarters.
Right. And how many patients does a site have to have before they actually receive a report?
They have to have at least one patient that meets the criteria to be in that report. So if you have one patient in the research build, you will at least receive the cumulative all patient report.
And then Tiandra followed up, how do we identify those patients since we no longer have access to their data in Intermacs? So are you, Tiandra, if you can confirm how you identify them in the report is what I'm assuming you're speaking about, questioning. Yeah, the transfer patients with AEs. So Ryan, they're not, I mean, in the reports, they're not identified by their patient ID number. So you're just grouping them in the cohort,
right.
Correct?
Right, they're just included, correct. I'm not sure, there's nothing that we directly give you that's gonna like one-click answer who are your transfer patients, but let me think on that and get with John. I mean, there might be, it seems like that would be relatively easy to figure out from the tools that we have, like how to determine which are your transfer patients. I mean, all of them have a transfer form where it's showing the control moves over to the second site. But I guess the first site doesn't still see them in the web. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for.
Yeah, I know, they, when they are transferred, they, Tandra, I'll have to get back. I'll have to get with Jeannie and Love and find out the exact details about what's seen and what isn't seen after they're transferred. But I believe, Maceo, didn't we have, or previously in the reports, like a list of transfer patients?
Yes, it should be in your data quality report.
Yeah.
I just logged into this is John. The live data download has the transfer form. So you could get a form level download of any transferred patients. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thanks, John. So Tandra, if you want to, we can discuss this more. It sounds like if you're familiar with the live data downloads, you'll see your transfer patients. It's also in the data quality reports, but we're happy to guide you to that exhibit number and can help you with the live data downloads.
Hey, Catherine, it's on page exhibit 2B.
Okay,
2B.
2B. Great. And the next question, I'm sorry for that. The next question is there a way to merge a patient profile and Intermacs? I mean, you can change the Intermacs patient profile on the follow-up forms if they've changed. Oh, you're not talking about device strategy. You're talking about the Intermacs patient profile. Yeah. So that is specifically for a primary LVAD patient. So I'm not for sure. I don't believe we're able to change it unless you went back and edited from the very beginning, but we discourage that.
Yeah, I don't quite understand the question, but I do know there are some exhibits stratified by patient profile, and our Kaplan-Meier tool will let you do some analysis by patient profile, as well as the dashboarding tool will let you do some analysis by patient profile. But yeah, I don't really know what the intent of the question was.
And Tandra, if you can just confirm if you're wanting to like change it at a follow-up or later on, that'd be great. Okay, and then her question is, a patient received their first device in 2018 and was explanted in 2021 for LV recovery. During explant admission, patient's health declined. Yeah, so actually, since this has dates in it, I'm actually gonna just, if you can just send this to me directly, that would be great. But I understand the intent of what you're talking about, but Patricia or I are happy to answer that question.
Let me ask the group, since everybody's here, I don't know if they can respond or not, but are there any exhibits that are particularly useful at sites, or do people look at the reports on a quarterly basis? I'm just curious about like what the most useful part of it is. Oh, here we got another question.
Yes. Is there a way to distinguish major versus minor device malfunctions in the AE table? Or are they lumped together in the overall event rate for device malfunction?
Let's go take a look at that exhibit together. I can pull it up and then I'll be completely accurate in my response. Again, this is hospital X, so it's no PHI. The rate stuff comes out 23. So for the rates, there's the main rate table where it's one row per top level adverse event. Like you mentioned, there's device malfunction and pump thrombosis is all lumped together. After the main rate table, it goes into different specific types with a little bit more granularity. There's bleeding. There's device malfunction and pump thrombosis get broken out. But it looks like we don't go more granular than that. That might be a good edit request for future edits, because people have been asking, what happens at a more granular level than just device malfunction. Let me back this up and look at the cumulative all patients. Let's see, that was exhibit 23. So I'm kind of blasting through to get to that exhibit. Okay, so, okay, it was device infections that we broke into more granular stuff. So, yeah, that might be something we want to put on the queue for future releases if we want to consider it, Catherine.
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely put that in the queue. Absolutely.
I see some folks saying the survival data and AE data is helpful. Thanks, Dave.
Yes.
Rachel. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of the sense that I get. So that feedback helps me.
And then Dave is asking about if we can make the SAS download files more SQL friendly. That would be a question for you and John.
I guess there I would have to ask to define SQL friendly. Any of the quarterly data sets I upload, I do upload just a flat file, a text delimited file, which should be very SQL friendly.
Thanks, John. And we have another question. If there's been any further discussion about including incarcerated patients into the database now that it's no longer used for research. I think we had discussed that maybe at one of the user group calls, or maybe it's the last reporting webinar, but we definitely, we have a task force meeting coming up, and that's one of the topics on the agenda. So we'll definitely let everyone know that. I think that it possibly may be as, an exception as they occur, but definitely we will keep everyone up to date on that. I think we've already discussed. John, do you have any more to add about SQL friendly downloads?
I saw the second part of his question after I answered, referring to greater than 1,000 columns, and that's something that we have to talk about, Ron, because right now that those data sets that I upload mimic the structure of what we use internally to do any research. And any columns that are there for a reason for us for research. So this would be something we would have to look at for something specialized, or we might have to make some cuts. And I wouldn't want to do that. I would rather see if there's any kind of options in SQL or something we could do to try to expand that limitation for you rather than limit the data we're giving you.
Thanks, John. I agree.
Why don't you take that question back to Rama? See if there's like alternate ways to import that data. I'm not familiar with SQL kind of issues, so I couldn't really answer.
I know enough about SQL to be dangerous, Dave. So I'm poking around right now to try to answer your question, but I'm going to take it to our database lead and ask him.
But we definitely, I mean, if those are the tools you're using to use your data, we definitely want to find an avenue to get all of the information, because like John said, all those columns are there for a reason. At least, we've had to calculate them to answer questions over the years.
Well, thanks, everyone. We'll give everyone another minute or two. Our next, I did want to pull this back up. Our next, the Intermacs user group webinar will be November 30th at 1 p.m. Central Time. And our next reporting webinar will be January 19th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Central Time. But in the meantime, let's see if we'll get any more questions. And while we're waiting on more questions, I just want to thank Ryan, Dr. Cantor and Maceo and John and Brandon and Patricia from UAB from joining. And also thank you, Carol from STS, for joining. And if that's it, if you think of any more questions or any additions to the reports or the dashboard, you can contact myself or Patricia Potter and let us know. And we'll get back to you regarding the questions that we're going to follow up on. I think that's it. I hope you all have a great day, and thanks again, everyone.